So now let's go back to the question I had, and that was with Hellboy. How'd you get involved with Hellboy Christmas special?
Well, I know Mike Mignola pretty well, and I was working in the back of his comic on the Monster Men stuff,
Hmm.
which was a real thrill when he asked me if I wanted to come up with something to kind of fill up the back of his Hellboy comics. And,
Right.
he liked what I was doing, and one thing led to another, and we decided to put up this Christmas special. And Jeff Darrow's another old friend of mine. Actually, I went to art school with Jeff Darrow,
Right.
and the three of us decided to, hey, let's put out a festive Christmas issue. So that was the Hellboy Christmas issue. And we had a lot of fun. It was something that was just a one shot. But actually, I wouldn't mind doing something like that again with Mike and Jeff, of course.
That's cool. That's cool. And I'm glad that you're able to just be so diverse with the projects that you do.
Well, that I am lucky there. Not every illustrator can do comics, and not every comic artist can do illustration work. They're two different art forms.
Right.
Um, uh, Bless you. But I just, I kind of, I guess I have a knack for being able to jump back and forth, and I enjoy both
Right.
mediums. And actually, even newspaper comic strips are different yet again from both comics and illustration work. But these categories are kind of it's an age-old debate, but I wish we could kind of blur the lines between illustration and comics, and just as Duke Ellington said about the differences between classical and jazz music. He once said, "If it sounds good, it is good." So there's really no clear line of defining one against another.
Right. Looking at some of your work, here's an example. It seems like here's a sketch, and then
Oh yeah, yeah.
so do you normally sketch things out first, and then
Yes, actually, you'd be surprised how many sketches I do for one of those books, like the Conan book, or
mm-hmm.
even what I've just finished, which is a book for George R. R. Martin.
Mm-hmm.
I do a drawing for every page of the story.
Wow.
So if it's a 200-page story, by
Wow.
the time I'm done, I have, and this is one of my sketchbooks, but I have a drawing for just about every page of a story here. Um, there are a lot of sketches no one's ever even seen. Most of them fall by the wayside, but I find it's kind of like making a movie. I don't mind doing these quick sketches. As a matter of fact, it's my favorite part, because you don't have to rely on too much reference.
Right.
You're just trying to capture the spirit of the author's intention at that moment.
Right.
And I find it very a freewheeling way of working. The real work comes in when you have to start shooting the models and looking for specific illustrations. But the sketches,
Right.
the sketch to me is the most fun part of a job.
That's cool. Now Prince Valiant, um, just the fluency, it looks alive. Some of these pictures here. I mean, I'm just,
Uh,
the artwork here. I'm just amazed of just well, anybody that has this kind of talent to take movement and really bring it to life is amazing.
well, that's something that I enjoy quite a bit, is the animated quality in a picture. I like movement in pictures. I remember looking at a N.C. Wyeth painting once in a museum where a guy is throwing a knife, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw the painting, and I swore that knife was moving the width of the painting. It's an elusive quality. It's difficult to capture. I think of some of the great comic artists like Jack Kirby and
Mhm.
Frazetta, Williamson. Some of these guys were really wonderful at drawing the human figure, and they also were able to uh, have this sense of this animation, this quality of movement in the figure, and I really like that. I try to capture that. In the Val stuff, well, with all my stuff, I really I look for that sense of figures moving in space.
How
Sometimes you have to create an environment as well,
right.
so you have this something to put it in context in a
Right.
room or through a jungle. Uh,
There's a picture I have here which looks like Caesar,
um,
and in fact, this is it right here.
hmm. Let's see. Oh yeah, that I when I was working with John Cullen Murphy,
Okay.
um, who was Foster's assistant and ultimately took on the strip after Hal Foster passed away.
Right.
Um, I was working with him at the time, and he was in his 80s by the time I started working with him, and he was happy to have me do the crowd scenes.
Right.
So when I was
He gave you all the work.
well, actually, I enjoyed that. I
Okay.
enjoyed the crowd scenes over having to draw Val or Alita.
Okay.
Because I wasn't all that familiar with Prince Valiant when he asked me to start the strip.
Okay.
A lot of people are surprised. They think I'm a longtime aficionado of Prince Valiant, or, quite honestly, even Solomon Kane. I had never read any of the Solomon Kane stories. I had never followed Prince Valiant. Um, I had to do, a quick boot camp in catching up with Prince Valiant. And when I was working with Murphy, he had a certain way of drawing Prince Valiant, and I could never quite uh, catch the knack of his approach to Val. So I always left Val to him, and he'd have me do the battle scenes, which was fine. They were easy for me to do.
That's really
Um,
cool. If you, in fact, I'm gonna put up this picture again. Um, you see the Roman soldiers lifting a beam. I guess they were
oh yeah.
putting together one of the chariots.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, and you could really see the stress on the body, the tilt. Like you actually get a feeling of the weight. So there's tons of people out there that want to draw. A lot of young illustrators that would like to develop that. How do you develop that skill?
I always tell upcoming illustrators to go to as many figure classes as they can and just constantly draw the figure, sketch the figure.
Okay.
It's coming from the source. You'll probably get 10 different answers from different artists.
Right.
But I think for the most part, that's a constant. They would say draw the figure as often as possible. And there are a lot of workshops, quick sketch workshops. I'm sure you're familiar with those kind of places where they'll have minute poses and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. I think that is really at the basis for that kind of skill, to develop that skill you're talking about.
I took a few classes where you had to draw um, a lot of objects, and then they eventually moved to nude models
Mm-hmm.
to try to get the structure. And I've heard several people say this as well as in class.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the skeleton. Because a
Oh,
lot
well,
of times and it's true, you're thinking of all the meat, you're thinking of, well, I got to get the belly right or the hair right. But you really need to think in reference to the skeleton to flow from there. Is that correct? Is that really
yeah,
the key?
yeah, that's a fundamental. I think anyone who's interested in the figure should learn the inside and the outside of the human figure to help create form. I even went so far as to attend a couple of dissections at a medical school.
Wow.
Uh, quite,
I'm
quite
just laughing
honestly.
at the fact that you're smiling so big when you say this. I went so far as to.
Well, actually, I don't think I learned uh, very much about drawing there, but it did pose a much more metaphysical question.
Hmm.
Seeing 20 cadavers in a room in various states of dissection.
Hmm.
I was about 21, 22 at the time.
Hmm.
And I don't think you can even do this today, but I remember the teacher throwing me a pair of rubber gloves, and
Wow.
he said, "Here, go ahead, cut up a body."
Wow.
And I think they treat cadavers a lot more respectfully now than they did then. But just the I, I don't know if an artist would learn a lot from looking at a dissected corpse, because to me, some of them looked like a turkey after a big Thanksgiving dinner. It was a mass of gray blobs, and I didn't even know what I was looking at certain moments with that stuff. It was fascinating. I remember I had these great theological discussions afterward with a couple of friends of mine about, the spark of life and so forth, because they looked. This is odd to say this, but they looked so dead. All those
Right, right,
bodies
right.
looked so dead. The muscle doesn't even uh, have any buoyancy to it anymore, and so the muscles would lay kind of flat. Uh, it was very interesting.
That's amazing.